Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Joseph De Leon, and I'm here as a founding member of Manila Angel Investors Network, the largest active private angel investor network in the Philippines. It's my privilege to be your moderator on this discussion where we'll be exploring the education and edutech landscape in the Philippines with our wonderful guest speaker, my friend Grace David. Grace is the Chief Marketing and Partnership Officer at Edukasyon, and Edukasyon is one of the leading edtech platforms in the Philippines. And they're on track to help over 1 million Gen Z users empower themselves to make decisions about their education, their career, and their lives. And that's a very vital role in unlocking the future of the Philippines' potential. So without further ado, um, good afternoon, Grace. It's good to see you.
Hi, Joseph. Good afternoon to you and to all the ones who are listening and watching this video.
So we'll just get right into it. So the first question really is we want to get a sense of what the Philippine landscape is like. And so how do you think the Philippines compares to its peers in the region in the education and edutech space?
Well, first, let me share to you, what are the key information about the Philippines as a country? We're a young nation, 25 years old is the median age. And something more specific now to the education space, we've just finished the K-12 transition. So we are now at a comparable number of years doing primary education with the rest of the countries here in Southeast Asia. Another key item actually that we need to note as we try to understand more the education space here in the Philippines, the free college tuition has already been approved in 2017. So allowing actually more Filipinos to have access to education, not just on their primary years, but also entering tertiary, college, or even technical vocational. So that's going to be more specific to the Philippines and in the education space. Now, how it is going to be different against all other countries. But what I'm seeing is that more than the differences, actually, Philippines has more similarities as a nation compared to all other Southeast Asian countries. And what I'd like to highlight there is that instead of just looking into the nuances of Philippines, of course, we take that into consideration during the execution phase. But what we're seeing is that the similarities when it comes to digital coming in as a critical tool in advancing learning, that one is not uniquely happening just in the Philippines. What's nice is it's happening in the region. And if it's happening in that manner, it means there's a lot of opportunity to fast adapt what has been working well in other countries, and definitely Philippines could be adapting those good learnings, good practices already that's happening.
That's great. Can you share an example of one of those fast adaptations that we're taking advantage of?
Well, first is it's really on the digital aspect of things. I think what's nice is that, especially with this pandemic, it's not a choice of do I go digital or keep my current traditional or current ways of teaching and learning as the practice. What's really happening at the total regional level is there's a more acceptance of digital as a tool, as a platform, in order to actually be more effective in learning.
It's fantastic. And I know that we're here to be optimistic about how things are going, but we also have to be realistic about the situations that we're facing. So I think one of the things people do want to know about is really, where can the Philippines do much better? Where's the biggest gap in your opinion versus our peers in the region?
Okay, where is our biggest gap? Well, first, I don't want to compare it versus other countries at this stage. Let's just zero in first on what's happening in the Philippines. So what's happening is, first, we know infrastructure was a big concern. And this is not the first time that we're hearing it. That's why couple of years ago, there was big initiative on let's make sure infrastructure is ready, that it is available. And when I say infrastructure in a Philippine setting, it's having more physical classrooms available. So that has been actually one of the initiatives of the earlier government, and definitely more classrooms have been provided. And what's nice is, especially amongst the younger age group, there are more young Filipinos who are inside the classroom. So that's like more than 90% of that young population inside the classroom. Now, where the gap is coming in, the infrastructure has been prepared. The K to 12, we were able to transition our curriculum in that manner, but the quality still hasn't improved as much as how the infrastructure has improved. So in quality, there are a lot of factors that we could look at. Teachers, are they actually properly trained to make sure that they'll be able to manage the class well? The curriculum itself, are we able to actually make sure that it is a relevant curriculum, especially with the demands of the economy right now, so that by the time our students graduate, they really are prepared to that set of jobs available in the market. So where the biggest gap is, and that's the biggest consequence that we are facing as a nation, which is a consequence of the gaps that we've been experiencing in the education space, is the job mismatch. So just to share with you some numbers, every year there's 2 million Filipinos who turns 18 years old. Now, 18 years old would be the right age that they should be actually graduating from high school, jumping to college. What we've seen is like in the last statistics, nearly half would make it and proceed to tertiary education. If not even tertiary education, getting to a tech voc learning.
Yep.
So automatically, there's already half. And then actually their learning, their formal learning, just on senior high school. Now, let's take a look on the half who made it actually to tertiary education. Only half of that actually gets to graduate, gets to actually receive a diploma. And even with like a good absolute number of students graduating with a diploma, cut it again in half. Only half lands to a job. And then if you take a look, those who graduated, landed in a job. After many years, more than a decade of studying, are they actually applying that learning to the very job that they have right now? What we found out, mismatch. So we've spent a lot of years, a lot actually, not just of time, but a lot of other resources of government, families, and individuals educating our youth, but just to find out at the end of that formal learning, the job that they end up having is actually not exactly what they were trained for. And then if you look at our economy after that, obviously the optimum output, it's not happening because again, we have to retrain supposedly the graduates who should have been ready to start working so that they could really be qualified and be ready to deliver optimum output. So that's the biggest gap that we're seeing. And yeah, that's already on the workplace, that's already in the output economy. But it all started in the classroom or in the learning situation. So just imagine the number of years and the payback period is when this individual, this Filipino youth is already ready to contribute. But by that time, even after so many years of learning, of being trained, still not fully qualified to do the job well. So that's a situation of our education system leading to actually the workplace and affecting obviously our economy.
That's very powerful to know that out of 2 million Filipinos that start every year as 18-year-olds to gonna go into the workforce, 4 years later, there's only a 12.5% survival rate. That is crazy. And I guess what you're saying is that with Edukasyon, you're trying to improve the lever so that at least this 12.5% end up doing something that they love, or at least are much more active and productive members of the economy. Is that the direction you guys are going?
Yes, so definitely impacting the economy and in the numbers game of it, right? Definitely that's one item you want to cover. But as individuals, as individual youth, we want them to also have that sense of fulfillment. Fulfillment of like, I learned something, and not just learned something, I learned something that's valuable to the society, to the economy. Then you know your sense of fulfillment also goes up. So that's actually something where we want to exactly contribute. Not just like giving them the learning, releasing diplomas, having them enrolled. Those are just, yes, those are important key metrics. But what really is important is like that sense of fulfillment that I'm not just an achiever, but I'm a key contributor, a valuable contributor to the economy.
I'm going to go off script a little bit, right? Because this is an ongoing discussion about, when I was 18, I didn't know what the hell I really wanted to do. And I'm sure that when these kids are, I don't know if their generation is that much different. Will there really be a big difference moving forward with that?
Okay. First, it's really understanding the behavior and the situation of our young ones. So, yeah, when we were like much younger, we were more listening to what would be our parents and friends would be saying, where they are. That's what we end up following as our course or as our learning journey. But what we're trying to do is allow them to have better informed decisions and sharing the information to them, the facts, not just of what's happening actually in the economy. Like for example, we Filipinos are actually popular for nurses and caregivers globally, right? But there came a point that there's just too many nursing graduates already in the Philippines that even if you are a licensed nurse, you end up with a job not nursing or medical field. So first item we want to share actually to the young Filipinos right now is what are the relevant jobs that the economy needs? Because obviously that's where you could be employed. So that's one information. Another information actually that we're allowing them to find out is their interests. And together with their interest is their skill set. Every individual is unique. And in your uniqueness, there's a unique contribution that you could give. And we want to find that out. And we want them to discover that. And then together with that information, have a macro outlook of things. These are the available jobs, especially now with the pandemic. Like these are like the new set of jobs that's going to be needed. You marry those, then make a decision already of what course, what learning you want to take. So that's actually the contribution that we're us from Edukasyon.ph that we're bringing in to the Philippines and into the ecosystem.
Grace, thanks for sharing that. I get that it's really important that the Philippines has made great strides in its infrastructure, but given that since the pandemic, schools have been physically closed, does it still matter?
Of course, we want them to all stay home. That's the safest that we could do right now. Yes, the physical classrooms actually don't add value at this point. And what the pandemic has done is to really illuminate one of the biggest accelerator that we should have been optimizing. And that is really the digital technology. So what's nice is that it pushed everyone to actually embrace it. Here in the Philippines, it's not replacing anything, but it's more of like integrating it to the learning experience of our students, and of course, making sure the schools, the teachers, the admins are actually adapting it as well. What needs to be done is digital literacy. That's going to be the very fundamental that I'll be sharing. It's not just about having the tools present, but it's also making sure that every user is knowledgeable how to use it. Like for instance, we were speaking to some of the schools. One of the difficulties of our teachers is not even just like, how could I be using this software as I manage online classes? As simple as like connecting to a Wi-Fi is already a concern of some of our users. Our Gen Z students were not worried about that. They've grown actually having technology and using it already. But the other side of that ecosystem is actually our schools. the learning the fundamental learning when it comes to digital should be at a certain level, same base level, not just of students, but also with the teachers. In that manner, conversation and learning could continue. That's the new infrastructure that we should actually be covering right now. Infrastructure in terms of like, yes, do we have the physical gadgets, the hardware available to our teachers and to our schools, to that learning ecosystem? But together with that hardware, the fundamental of digital literacy has to be present. Then conversation is happening, learning, exchange actually of learning is happening between your students and your teachers. That one cannot happen just with one school and then their set of enrolled students. It really has to happen in a collaborative way of the entire ecosystem. It's not just, okay, private sector, government, they've released all the gadgets, they've actually funded all the subscription, but that one has to come with the user in mind. The user is our teachers and our students, and that digital literacy has to be leveled.
Got it. So this whole system will not only have to accelerate the inevitable adoption to digital, but we have to be mindful that this situation doesn't actually make the digital divide even worse. Because you have the hardware and the software, the right people or education isn't behind the education, the gap might get even bigger. And do you see any other opportunities in terms of leveraging these technologies and platforms to close the quality gap between public and private schools and deliver more consistent education across the country?
What's nice on digital is that reach could happen faster. Like, we'll be able to cover more schools, more students, more teachers. That's what digital is doing. But I will just go back again. How do we make sure that that digital divide doesn't become way more too obvious? The digital divide is not just happening amongst our students. Let's think of our teachers as well. As we actually allow students to have access to better infrastructure, which is going to be our private sector providing that infrastructure, and the hardware, of course, let's also be conscious that our teachers need also the support. There should be no digital divide amongst our teachers, especially when it comes to demographics and age group. Because obviously the younger teachers will be able to adapt to digital easily. But at the end of the day, especially if you think of our public schools, we have older generation of teachers there. The digital divide should not be happening there as well. We've got to be actively involved on making sure that digital literacy is also happening amongst our teachers.
Thanks for sharing that, Grace. Since you're the head of partnerships for Edukasyon as well, and we're talking about this theme of collaboration, beyond the schools and beyond the public sector, are there other key partnerships that you want to highlight and perhaps invite other people to come and play with you?
Definitely, apart from our students and our schools, the private sector and of course the government have big roles to play. Easy to say funding, but like really not just funding. Like, we need the intellect that's being practiced in those industries and those businesses. We want to make sure that those are actually present in our education ecosystem as well. Because in that way, intellectual business thinking is also getting applied in the education space. So we want to learn. And our learning should not just be limited within the education space. Whatever great, especially when it comes to thinking and strategies that have been proven in all other industries, we want to know, is there something that we could fast adapt from those industries and allow innovation and acceleration of digital technology happen in the education space? Those are the things we want to hear. And that's a kind of help that the education would need.
So Grace, you're talking about empowering the Gen Z so that they can make better decisions. But one of the challenges is that the choices they make today for the jobs that they want, what if those jobs aren't there 4 years from now? How do we make sure that that intersection matches up with the opportunities?
It's all about life skills. So, even for us, not anymore the Gen Z, right? We need to make sure that we're always relevant and be able to contribute to the economy. And the best way to do that is really have the soft skills available. So problem solving thinking, creative design thinking, learning agility. Those are like life skills, soft skills that we want to make sure that our Filipino youth are exposed to and are getting trained. Because at the end of the day, we will always be actually managing changes, maybe not just on a yearly basis, but even on a shorter period of time. And the only way to make sure that they will be qualified and relevant to the needs actually of the economy is having those soft skills, life skills available, and not just like saying that, okay, I have an exposure to it, but like really experience. So very important that they are able to experience and practice that in their formal learning at this moment.
So Grace, as an insider in the game, let's pretend I was a genie and I could grant you three wishes. One from the public sector, the government, another from the private sector, and then the third wish is for the other players in the education space. What would your wish be to make things better?
I only have one wish, and it should be covered by all those three active members of the ecosystem. Collaborate. And with collaborate, there's that word linked to it, teamwork. Everyone, every member of that ecosystem has their own agenda, and I have full respect on that. But that agenda is actually towards a common goal of making sure that there would be no youth getting left behind. It should be no more youth unemployed, not inside the classroom, or untrained. We want them all being key contributor actually of learning and of the society. We all have that common goal. And my wish, can we just all talk and work together? Because we're all working anyway towards a common goal. And we always hear this. If you want to finish fast, go alone. And there are a lot of different players in that ecosystem are moving fast. But are we actually winning and getting to a real result? Sadly, not yet, because we're still not good on collaborating. So if you really are the genie, I wish that could happen soon, because that one is very much needed right now.
I think to wrap it up, in terms of where we are, the Philippines does have a long way to go in terms of competing with the region, but we're well placed because we're able to quickly adapt and learn from what's going on with our neighbors. There is a big gap that we need to close, but as Grace was trying to say, we can try to go fast by going alone, or we, across multiple sectors, can choose to go far by going together. And I think I'm going to adopt the vision and wish that Grace has as well, that we set up the country so that there is no child left behind, and that everybody gets to do what fits their passion, for lack of a better word. And with that, I want to thank each of you in the audience today and our organizers for this Origins Conference Techno Global. I hope you got something worthwhile from this conversation, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Have a wonderful day.